when I think about something that is in the realm of QuickBooks, I think about having a little bit of everything, right? It has a little bit of functionality around all of these different components. And depending on the solution, you may find a little bit, to this point, we might find a little bit more TMS than you would find in QuickBooks, let's say, right? Where in QuickBooks, you may find a little bit better inventory control than another solution. But that to me is the big differentiator. It's that layered complexity.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. While there are several process manufacturing solutions out there, they all differ in their capabilities. Some are designed for growers and processors, while others are friendlier for distributors and DTC companies. The process manufacturing verticals have unique nuances such as the hierarchy of serial and lot numbers. The serial numbers need to be managed at the UOM, case, and license plate levels. The pharma distribution may also have requirements such as DST and route accounting, with e-signature required for the delivery and then e-signature required at each process step for pharma compliance. So where does ECI Deacom fit, and how is it different from the other process manufacturing solutions in the market? In today's episode, we invited a panel of industry experts for a live discussion on LinkedIn to conduct an independent review of ECI Deacom's capabilities. We covered many grounds, including their depth with pharma and process manufacturing capabilities, with features such as lot and serial number traceability, DST accounting, recipe and nutritional label printing. We also covered some of their weaknesses such as multi-entity accounting and rigid structure for their chart of accounts. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hello everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you're joining for the first time, this is part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We review one vendor or the solution. Today, we have a very exciting solution. It's called ECI Deacom, one of the prettiest overall from the technology perspective. So we are going to have a lot of fun discussing that. Before we do that, we will start with our intros. If you still don't know me, I am Sam Gupta, your host, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. On that note, I am going to move to Dave for his intro.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. My name's Dave Chrysler, and I own an operations consulting business working with leaders in the manufacturing and distribution spaces, helping them to optimize their business processes and create systems throughout their business. I come to you with more than 20 years of various operational leadership roles, which included several ERP implementations. So excited to be here with you.
Amazing. Thank you so much
Sam,
for
did
being
you say you were invincible?
Invincible.
No, you said principal. I thought you said invincible, but I knew you said principal.
Well, it's impossible to not know him, Andy.
Oh my goodness, Andy is so much fun.
So
It's
my
always
name
fun
is
to
Andy.
host shows, and that's why I like to have Andy here.
I'm just a barrel of laughs. I'm a barrel of monkeys.
Okay, Andy, do you want to go next?
Sure. Okay. My name's Andy Pratico. I work with manufacturers regarding ERP software. I've been in the business for all my life, and I've worked all over North America. And I also have a published book on how to evaluate ERP software. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for being here, Andy. And if you're in the audience and joining for the first time, make sure you guys post your questions and comments. We typically try to cover them during the. If we run out of time, we'll make sure that you leave your answers. And Andy, we will try to be invincible, and that's a tough word. I don't know how I'm able to do that today, to be honest. Okay.
Well, you can be an invincible principal. Then you can be a
invincible principal. That's a cool one. Actually, I'm gonna take that title.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have fancy titles probably for Halloween this year. Okay, so let's get back to the show. So obviously this is a very interesting solution, and I am going to do quick briefing as we always do. And obviously these guys are with ECI, so we'll do a little review of the ECI's corporate strategy as well. And how they are really winning the game, and we are probably going to have a little team there of Invincible now. And I don't even know if I understand all the word there. But in the case of ECI, the corporate strategy is very similar to your Infor, Apicor, as well as Aptine, right? I mean, that's those four we have been talking together. Overall, these four have very similar strategy in terms of going for slightly more packaged approach. Or the suite-centric approach. I mean, there are a lot of different suite-centric solutions, but these guys are real packaged, meaning you get a lot out of the box. Even the integrations, as well as any of the best of breed solutions that you may be integrating with other solutions, or that might be add-on third-party modules. With these 3 vendors or 4 vendors, you are going to get everything out of the box, maintained, managed, supported, upgraded by ECI. So that's where the real difference. Now, ECI overall in terms of market share, they like to target slightly more lower end of the market share. The majority of the products that they have, they are very QuickBooks-like products. Dave and Andy, you guys can correct me, if I'm off here. But overall, when I look at the QuickBooks segment, and this has been a learning for me as well. Okay, obviously, as like Andy has been selling this for 40 years. I have hardly been in ERP space for 20 years.
You weren't alive 40 years ago, Sam.
Yeah, I know. And, I'm still trying to figure out, okay, what is the difference between QuickBooks and the larger ERPs? Always trying to, get that questions answered. And I still get confused. Okay. So one of the things that I found, okay, the real difference between QuickBooks and some of the other ERPs that we have is the majority of the QuickBooks add-ons or the QuickBooks systems or the systems that is designed around QuickBooks experience, they don't necessarily model the products. That modeling of the product is where the real differentiator is between.
What do you mean by modeling the product, Sam?
So when I say modeling of the product, meaning when you are going to have a SKU, and Andy, I think we have had a lot of different debates whether you need SKU for every single product in different industries or not. Some might keep it as more of the optional because some companies don't like to create the SKU for every single product that they are going to have because they might be service centric. But in general, when I say modeling of the SKU, what it means is SKU is going to have 1,000 different data elements. Sometimes they could be 10,000 depending upon the depth of the ERP system and depending upon the data architecture that it might have, right? So when you look at QuickBooks, everything is text-based. So when you are going to say your SKU, you are typing 11001 and the circuit breaker that I'm trying to sell. It's all text. It doesn't have any meaning, okay? If you're going to look at the ERP system, when you input that number or the text string, it's going to bring 10,000 different data elements that are going to be very well organized so that you don't have to enter all of those 10,000 times. You don't have to maintain those 10. But modeling that is a rocket science in general for companies. The companies who have not implemented an ERP system, for them, it's very, very big. So there is a little inflection point there, or crossing the chasm is the term that they used in marketing. I don't know whether you guys remember that or not from your business schools, but that's what they use. But this chasm is so big for companies to be able to move away from these QuickBooks-like systems. And that's why if you're going to see any sort of add-ons that are going to be in that QuickBooks family, they don't model as much information. And that's why people feel that, oh, ERP system, very hard. I'm not going to touch them. Because now we are getting into the depth of accounting, depth of procurement, MRP, so much to learn in that. So that's a real difference between your QuickBooks and the ERP system. And I don't know, Andy, if I answered your question or not. Did I?
I'm not certain, but
Follow up. Comments,
well,
please. What
you
did you
said that.
understand?
I think you said it's all text. So, and then you started talking about part numbering, and you enter one part number to bring in 10,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not really sure if I understand. Is it because it's not a relational database, or what is the issue?
Let's not get to the database just yet.
Okay,
We are
never mind.
talking
Never
about
mind.
just one piece of information, okay, that is not relationally organized to be able to get that information automatically on your screen or whatever transaction that you might be performing. And Dave, maybe you might do a better job here. Are you with me? Not with me?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think I'm with you, and I think Andy, maybe another way to explain it is when you're talking about a product similar to QuickBooks, outside of, to Sam's point, outside of the underlying database structure and how those things work, it's really um, it's the attributes that are associated with individual items and or SKUs and how that information flows throughout those modules as it pertains to like a specific transaction. So if you're going to have some sort of an inventory transaction, the depth in which you could track and also see the attributes and existing related transactions would be very minimal in a system like QuickBooks as compared to something with significant depth like a kind of traditional ERP system. And the part that is missing, and I think what Sam means by the modeling, is that for many businesses, they're not thinking about that relational aspect of all of those attributes and how you can leverage that information to make decisions about what happens in your business. Because most of the time they're looking at surface level information, have not given any additional thought or context to how to build those relations, especially if they haven't been through any type of a real implementation.
So, what would be the risk of this, not having the relational attributes or a QuickBooks type system?
I mean, from my perspective, you're relying on surface level data and having to go the extra mile yourself, versus being able to rely on the underlying technology to bring those transactions together and to be able to evaluate the output of that data. So I like to think about it from the standpoint of, when you go into a business and you see even today, you can go into many businesses that are running on one of the top tier ERP platforms, and what you'll see from a process standpoint is a lot of that data gets pulled out of their ERP system, gets formatted and or run through various Excel
BI
spreadsheets,
tool or something.
right?
Yeah.
Those types of things, some sort of external tool. And it's that same thought process, and from the differentiator of like a QuickBooks type system. So from my perspective, the real risk is that you're relying on something external to execute those processes. Where if you were to go with an ERP platform that was implemented in the proper way, or what you would expect to be the proper way, all of that process and functionality is going to live inside of that system. The depth of information, the accuracy, the speed to which you can pull that and make decisions to operate your business, it just provides that much more firepower, if you will, on both reliability and, I would say, kind of security standpoint, if you will. That to me is the big differentiator between the two, and why, back to Sam's point about kind of the modeling aspect, why a lot of companies get kind of scared by having these conversations, because they've not thought about it from that depth. They're used to pulling things out and going to a third party, or I just need this really simple inventory functionality. Okay, well, do you need serialization? Do you need lot tracking? How many layers of that do you need? What kind of what kind of setup is going to be in your warehouse? Do you need TMS with it? It's all of those. You start to peel back that onion. It's all of those layers that then complicate complicate the functionality, but in the long run it goes to provide the leadership team the most amount of data to make the best decisions in the fastest amount of time.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, Andy, and if we have any sort of follow-up questions, obviously we can take them during the conversation as well, and we'll be touching on all of these points. But in general, even for people who have been, and I don't know, Andy, whether you are really trying to get this information from us or really struggling to understand this, but in general, people struggle to understand this, and this is mind-blowing personally for me, to be honest.
Completely. Okay? Look at how many customers QuickBooks has, and they have an incredibly strong following.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
it's very, very, very hard for people to be able to understand the difference. And by the way, when I say ECI, most of the systems that they have are very QuickBooks-like. The degree of modeling is what drives how much maintenance you are going to require in the long run, how connected your information is going to be, and how reliable insight that you are going to get. So I think the best way to understand this is going to be in terms of thinking the composite that you are building. So you have these atoms and you have the molecules, and you keep building these molecules, pieces of information, tying all of that together, and finally you are creating some sort of KPI. That KPI is the overarching information, the financial statement that you are getting, but that relies on millions and millions of variables underneath and their dependence. And that is all sort of broadcasted by your SKU. So SKU is that powerful in general, and that modeling is that powerful. So when I say these systems are very QuickBooks-like, their degree of modeling is going to be very short in general. They are going to be modeling 4 elements, 5 elements, 2 layers, 3 layers. The deeper the ERP system, the bigger the ERP system, the more layers of modeling it is going to require, because they have that complexity that they need to be able to get the insight that they are looking for, to be able to reduce the data entry, to be able to reduce the maintenance time across the layers. So that's the real difference. And when you look at the ECI screens, the way they are modeled, and that's why I have always been big proponent of, whenever you look at a screen which is going to be completely flat, no organization on that screen, that means they have not modeled anything. They don't have any sort of background in the relational data modeling, because that's what dictates how easy it is going to be to maintain your data over the period of time. So it's just mind-blowing. So we'll look at ECI screens, and typically the less modeled the data is, the fewer screens you are going to have in the ERP system in general. Now, people are going to say, from my perspective, I want everything flat because it's just easy, less number of clicks.
That's what everyone focuses on, what looks easy.
Right. But you need to think about one thing, Andy. When you look at from the maintenance perspective versus from the consumption perspective, maintenance is always going to be easier when you have the layered data. The consumption is always going to be easier when you have flat data. When you have layered data, you can convert that into flat data. Easy. But if you have flat data, you can never get the layered data because the traceability is lost. So that's where the real difference is. That's why most of the ERP systems, and this is all fundamentals of relational databases, as well as the modeling, as well as database design, the way databases are designed, they are designed for reuse, repurposing. And that's the sort of the foundation of software engineering in general. So we can start on the slides, but we have one comment, and I would like to cover that before we move to the slides. So here, Anders is saying pulling data out to analyze. It's always been my hunch that there are a variety of reports that everyone needs, but that aren't included. The VARs, step in and supply those. Check with your VARs and ERP consultants to see what they have already developed. So Anders, depending upon the ERP system that you are working with, some of them are going to have a lot of reports depending upon the industries that they might be selling. The newer ones typically have a lot more, at least from the financial perspective, because the underlying use case for the ERP system is always going to be finance. Now, when you look at the operational ledger, the operational report, sometimes those might not be available, especially if the ERP system is targeted more as the system, then you might need to go to your consulting companies. But you are absolutely right. I completely agree with this comment. Any other comment before I move to slides, guy? No? Okay. So Deacom obviously is very, very, very interesting product because number one, ECI strategy we have already discussed. And in the ECI portfolio, there are many different products that they have. And Deacom is targeted for process-centric industries. ECI, I don't believe they had exposure in the process centric industries, and that's why they wanted to get into this product. Okay, ECI, and you guys need to remind me the products that they have. I mean, their strategy is very similar to Epicor. If you look at their, but obviously for these smaller patches, Epicor targets slightly bigger, customers. These guys are targeting very QuickBooks centric customers, as well as the ones that are going to be slightly more into e-commerce, DTC kind of spaces, because ECI roots were very website centric. It was a website company before they became, the ERP company. So they still like to follow the systems that are going to be very DTC focused. And Deacom was always very DTC focused in general, because this was commercialized for your pharma distributors, pharma manufacturers, and we have seen a lot of layers inside your F&B as well as pharma as well. When we look at last time we reviewed Aptene's product, right? So when you compare, let's say, the Process Pro, Ross, your Just Food, BC Food, okay, there are layers in every single ERP system. They are designed for a very specific purpose. For example, if I remember correctly, BC Food was designed for growers and processors. Now, this particular product is not going to be a good fit. And Dave, I think you missed last one. You would have loved that, because when you look at into the grower patches, they have very different accounting. Okay, they require this accounting to be part of your core package. If you are not going to have that, an add-on is not going to help you, to be honest. Okay, the accounting is so deep when you get into the grower space. So this particular product is not necessarily designed for growers. This is going to be more for pharma distribution. And in general, in the process space, there are a lot of different complexities. The amount of functionality that they require, the number of systems that they are going to be needing for their operations are just humongous. They pretty much need everything. They need, starting from your POS to your e-commerce to your DSD or root accounting. That would be sort of the TMS layer. They need WMS. They need MES. They need asset maintenance. They need you name a system in the architecture, and they probably need that, including your PLM as well as QC as well. So that's why the process space in general, in my mind, is far more complex than many other industries. So in this particular case, they are targeting the pharma-centric companies, the food and beverage distributors. Those are going to be the right fit the way the product model is designed. It might not work for the deeper process-centric manufacturers. It might struggle just because the kind of data model that they have. So here, some commentary, they are talking about Deacom ERP, comprehensive ERP platform that gives process manufacturers, they have mentioned process manufacturers, one core product that integrates all the modules they need to operate, including warehouse management, quality control, e-commerce, and direct delivery. So they are mentioning only four, but when you get into the depth of process manufacturing, it gets very, very, very deep. I don't think this product is going to be fit for every single process manufacturing out there, but it is going to be for the process manufacturer that are going to be either food centric or pharma centric, that are going to be lighter in manufacturing. That's where this product is going to be good fit. This is the announcement, by the way. This is coming from the acquisition that ECI did. So here they are talking about Deacom will join ECI's manufacturing division, which currently serves nearly 14,000 manufacturers and job shops worldwide. The majority of the products that they have, and Andy, you'll get a kick out of it. I think Job Boss, M1, we have reviewed, and what else? The E2 Shop Tech, I guess, we have reviewed that. So
Max is another one. They've got a series of products.
Yeah, and this is all.
The new Job Boss, of course, is a combination of the old E2 and the old Job Boss. They merged, but yeah, they've got quite a few different.
Exactly, and they have presence in all of the verticals where Epicor is present as well. So they have all of the comparable to your lumber track, BIS track. They are also in the lumber distribution space, the building material distribution space. They hang out in all of that. So they have product for that too. So it's very interesting the way their strategy is. So here they are saying Decom to ECI portfolio will allow us to serve batch as well as process manufacturers in addition to the discrete. And when they are using, I think, batch word, that would be slightly more appropriate than process manufacturing, because I don't think this product will work for companies like chemical manufacturing.
Continuous process. You mean are good for batch process?
Exactly. This will be good for slightly more batch centric companies that are going to be, food centric, pharma centric. They all are very batch centric. Process, I'm not too sure. Yeah. And Andy, you are using the term continuous process. I'm always careful in the word continuous, and I think we have had this discussion before as well. So I don't know if the continuous process is going to be the same as your oil.
Petroleum, that's where I think of continuous process.
Yeah, those are definitely, I'm not talking about those because, again, those are very unique spaces. The way they do their accounting. Microsoft is the only product that I have seen being used there. They have very specific ERP systems in those spaces. So I'm not talking about that. I'm still talking about very chemical centric process where the fluid is not moving through pipe. I'm not talking about that.
Discrete batch process. They make a big vat and put it into smaller buckets, etc., etc.
Exactly. Dave, go ahead.
Think about my example always, Andy. Printing ink, right?
Exactly.
Big batch of printing ink that gets mixed per color and divvied out into small buckets.
Sure. Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. And Andy, in my mind, when I like to think about the continuous versus the non-continuous, it's always going to be continuous is not going to have any start or end. Okay, when you are going to have those kind of spaces, then we have a real problem. Okay. We are not talking about that. We are talking about patches where we are going to have a start and end, but in that also there are nuances between your batch and process. Those are the ones that I'm talking. Okay, so some more commentary here. So here they are describing, I think pharma is where their main focus is in general. So they are trying to describe the doc scheduling based on unit of measure, and that is a very interesting process to be. Okay, so in general, most ERP system will probably stay away from this. There are very few ERP systems that get into either zip code based, shipping zip code based scheduling or unit of measure based scheduling. That gets into very much into the TMS territory. And when you look at the TMS capabilities, it's very, very, very deep, to be honest. Okay, how much are you going to sort of incorporate as part of ERP? You have to draw the line somewhere. Okay, this is TMS, this is WMS, and this is my ERP. And typically inside TMS, you are looking at a lot of different things. When you look into international trade compliance, when you look into things like dangerous goods, handling, it gets very deep. So these guys have tried to incorporate everything as part of the ERP system. For smaller businesses, this is okay. But if you are going to be, let's say, 20, 30, $50 million business, then you have to separate your warehouse from TMS or you are going to run into challenges. It's very hard for those warehouse workers to be able to understand accounting errors when they are going to be processing these transactions. So it becomes very difficult. That's why typically TMS boundaries are separate, but it's very interesting that they have incorporated these TMS boundaries here. So they are talking about established rules for each doc. This is the very specific doc scheduling functionality, which typically resides inside your TMS, or WMS is where you are going to find. And sometimes even WMS, TMS, they don't cover doc scheduling. They are like, get an add-on. That's not my baby because I have too much to handle here. But these guys are obviously doing a lot. So here they are saying estimated shipping time based on unit of measure, and that's a very interesting layer there. Okay, because you need to have that data modeling, Andy. So this is where your data modeling comes in, because the kind of decisions that you are going to be making, you have to have correlation inside the system. If you don't have that, you cannot make those decisions. So that's where, so this correlation is very important as well. This most ERP systems are probably going to struggle. So here then we are talking about appropriate appointment window for each incoming and outgoing load. Now this scheduling is very different from other scheduling. So again, you have very thick functionality that typically resides inside your TMS. Then we have utilized drag and drop, and this is all dispatch workflow, and this gets very complicated in them. Okay, in most cases, this resides, and this is where the bread and butter is, because the way carriers work, if they have to wait for 10 minutes outside, if you called, and Dave, I'm pretty sure you can relate with, okay, if you call them at 10:10, okay, and their window is going to be 10:40, as soon as they are going to have 10:50, you are probably going to get the overage bill, and that is probably going to be $500 because they are very, very, very tight and their margins are very low. Dave, if you have any comment, you can take.
Yeah, no, I mean, yes, I agree with you. It used to not be as big of an issue as it is lately. The other thing I was going to add to what you were saying, Sam, and kind of back to your modeling example. I mean, I agree with you. The one thing that kind of jumped into my mind is, a way to differentiate these things, and that layered complexity that you see with a typical ERP solution compared to something that is more in the category of a QuickBooks, right? And it's back to this layered functionality. But when I think about something that is in the realm of QuickBooks, I think about having a little bit of everything, right? It has a little bit of functionality around all of these different components, and depending on the solution, you may find a little bit, to this point, we might find a little bit more TMS than you would find in QuickBooks, let's say, yep. Right? Where in QuickBooks, you may find a little bit better inventory control than another solution. But that to me is the big differentiator. It's that layered complexity, and it's easy to spot, because the reason that these solutions can offer a little bit of everything for a very approachable price is because that complexity, that layered complexity, does not exist. They cannot support that level of development, kind of given those constraints. So
exactly, could not agree more. Even from the technical standpoint, it's much easier data model, much easier to manage, much easier to understand. Even if you are going to pay a developer $20 an hour, they are probably going to be okay. But when you have 50,000 layers, and if you are going to pay that, they are probably not going to be okay, because they are going to get headaches after analyzing those 50,000 layers. So now here, we have some more commentary here. Drag and drop loads, schedule load around on calendar days through the visual diagram. Again, that's a very dispatch-centric functionality. Minute by minute scheduling. Minute by minute, guys. Even the production scheduling is not minute by minute. So obviously this is a big deal. And again, that falls under that TMS. TMS are far more time sensitive in general, the way they work, the kind of products they are dealing with. So again, this is a very TMS centric functionality. Automatic appointment triggers, very, very, very TMS centric. Unit of measure default loading times. Can you believe this? And the whole scheduling the packaging is very, 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 very challenging the way it works. And this is bread and butter for a lot of food centric distributors. So let's say if you are a $5 million shop, and if I ask you, okay, you need to integrate your ERP TMS, they are not going to buy that. Number one, they don't have internal expertise. Number two, it's going to be very expensive. So for them, this is a pure gold, because it's all done. The only thing they have to figure out, okay, how can I enter my SKUs? And that's it, done, boom, I'm off to the races, right? So that's where this product, or these products that are going to be very QuickBooks like, do wonders for these kind of business. Okay, so I don't have anything else. Now, when you look at the quality, even the quality is very, very, very strong in general. The way they have done it, but they have named it slightly differently. So when you look at these test ranges, and you are going to find these test ranges in a lot of different ERP systems, even in some of the discrete manufacturing systems. But the whole idea is, again, these are the layers. So a test case, Andy, is going to be on top of your item, and then you are going to have a test program. So depending upon the kind of ERP system or the quality system you are talking about, and depending upon how many layers and the approvals that you are going to be needing for the quality, they are going to have as many layers, and the one-to-one relationship between these hierarchies or the data points that you're going to have. But in this particular case, this is a slightly simplified model overall from the QC perspective, what they are doing, but they are able to do your SPC, the catch weight management, all of that they are able to accommodate as part of the plan. The hold management is very interesting. The way hold management works, that's a very specific process. So you can't handle that by one custom field somewhere. It doesn't work that way. Hold management is a functionality that you need to have. If you have the hold management, then you need to have that as part of your ERP system. So that's probably going to be a critical difference for your business processes. Now, I love this diagram. And Andy, you have been asking a lot of different questions from the technology perspective. Okay, so I'll give you a real brief here in terms of how these technology layers work. So typically, you are going to have 3 layers in most software or the enterprise centric systems. Okay, depending upon how many ever systems you have, each of those systems are going to have these 3 or 4 layers. Typically, you are going to have the database layer, and then we are going to have a service layer, and then you are going to have a front end layer. Now, Andy, when you go to the demo, the only thing you see is this part right here, this fancy stuff. So what companies do is nobody really understand how the relational data modeling works. Okay, even the experts struggle to understand. Okay, nobody is going to be able to figure this out until they start using it. Even after using for some time, they still might not be able to. Okay, so they don't have to worry about changing that. So a lot of legacy systems, they have not touched this at all. Sometimes that could be RPG on mainframe, or DB2 as your database, and that's going to be very. And Andy, you are far more expert in this than I am in database from 1980s or 70s.
I should open a museum.
Yeah, you should, Andy. So here, those are the databases they still have, and changing the data model is always the hardest part in an ERP system. You can change UI. UI is the easiest. That's why companies could actually change the UI on top of the legacy products. That's why they are able to fake as sort of the cloud system. Data model is always going to be the hardest, and data model is the differentiator for your ERP system. That's what drives whether you are going to get results. That's what drives whether how much customization you are going to be needing, whether people are going to like the ERP system or not. That's where the real truth. So that is always the hardest that companies have not changed. The service layer, sometimes they might change, sometimes they might still have mainframe running, and they might create sort of a terminal here from the UI. A lot of systems do. So obviously, developers can be creative in the backend to be able to enable the same experience that born in the cloud systems are going to have. But this one is a real system. They have published their architecture to public that this is what I am doing. So when you talk to the legacy systems, ask for their architecture. And if somebody is not comfortable revealing that, most likely it's a legacy system. That's your trick right there. Okay. So here they are talking about API layer, C hash. Some systems might use RGP. I've already covered that point. Here they have the SQL Server.
You call that C hash? That just shows you how old I am. Because I call that C sharp.
C sharp. Yes, Andy.
You're part of the millennium.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was thinking that Andy is never going to be able to catch that. And that's why I was trying. Okay, let me try. And
as soon as you say hash, you must be 20 years old.
I always screw that up. Okay. I always do that. Yeah.
The hash to me is a type of breakfast.
Yeah.
Right, Dave?
Now Andy's joke. So I probably need the reminder that 5,000 times before I get that corrected. But yeah, I always read that as I never read that as C sharp. I don't know. They should probably put a knife there. If they want.
Yeah, the word. Yeah.
How do you relate hash with a sharp? I don't know how to do that. My mind does not work in that sense. Okay. Go ahead, Andy. Go ahead.
I was going to say, in the real old days, that was for pounds.
Yeah, I can take pound, man. Sharp, there's no way I can relate. I mean, there's no knife there.
No.
I have to see knife to be able to relate with sharp.
Well, I'm not positive of this, but I believe that it is a carryover from music. How you reference a music note, that is the same symbol for a sharp music note. So I've not traced the history of that, but I believe that is where it came from.
Oh, that's a history lesson right there. And Sharp, meaning the music brand Sharp, is what you are talking about, right?
Yep.
Very interesting. But they could have done the music symbol right there. Why do they?
Well, it's one and the same. That is the symbol for the notes. Yeah.
like that ampersand looking thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one, guys. Thank you so much, guys. Okay, so some more comments here. So 2 minutes upgrade sounds like a website. 2 minutes upgrade, guys. Okay, so this is another trick, Andy, that I can give you. So if somebody says they have the 2 minute upgrade for their entire ERP, the what it means is they are not going to have as many layers in their database.
Okay.
Their data model is going to be simplified. There's
Right.
no way in the hell any ERP system, I guarantee this, okay, is going to take 2 minutes for the upgrade unless, again, you are upgrading an e-commerce platform or a website.
Right,
Database
right.
is where the upgrade takes long time. When you are upgrading a PHP-based system, okay, when you are upgrading a file-based system, you don't have to go through the same puzzle to be able to correlate these things that are going to be part of your relational data. File-based things are typically easier. That's why, if you go back to your older days, any of the DB2 centric databases were easier to upgrade. In general, the amount of time that they took was not as higher. In the relational databases, the time is going to be far higher in general. Okay. So again, this is very, very, very interesting. And then they are talking about 1 minute MRP. Are you serious? Okay.
I know, it's crazy.
I have
Well-
seen 5 hours.
Well, yeah, but if you think about it, the fact that it's targeted at process, their bombs are going to be relatively flat. I mean, there might be a few items going into it, but relatively flat. So therefore, the generation wouldn't take as long. But 1 minute, it depends. That's totally relational on how much power your computer is versus how much data they're chugging through. And if it's any amount of data at all, it's not going to be 1 minute. There's no way.
So Andy, now you are speaking my language. Okay, that's what modeling is, to be honest. This is that's what modeling is. So when you are doing the real deep casting, the way Infor MRP system or Epicor MRP system is going to do, okay, you have to take 4 or 5 hours. Sure, you can chunk it out, you can segment it, but the amount of data or the amount of entries that each run is generating, it takes as long for those relational workload to be able to update that. Even if you have optimized the technology, 1 minute, again, it's very, very, very. That's what you should.
When you said modeling, I thought you meant like women, that
exactly.
putting Versace clothes
I
on.
knew that Andy would go there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Handsome Andy can think about modeling. Okay, so some more, commentary here. So here we are talking about, by the way, guys, unit production. Okay, so here the way the lot and serial number hierarchy, is established in the pharma space, it's very challenging. And this is where Andy and I'm again going to be talking about modeling. Modeling gets very complex. You are looking at layers and layers. So typically in most ERP systems, you are going to have, let's say, your documents are going to be, okay, your SKUs are probably going to be linked, your lot numbers may be linked. But when you talk about serial to serial number linking, okay,
right.
A pill has a serial number, a case has a serial number, a pallet, okay, in this particular case it could be a license plate, okay, so a license plate has serial number, and all of these serial numbers need to be linked all the time.
Right,
guys, that's a lot of work.
And it takes a lot more than 1 minute.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about only the MRP here, just to enter this data.
Yeah.
Okay, systems such as SAP, they fail. I have seen scenarios where, let's say, if you're entering a million serial numbers without any hierarchy, the system chokes. That's how much workload is required, to be honest, okay? In some cases. Dave, go ahead, you have a comment.
Well, Sam, I mean, to that point, right, my first kind of comment I was going to make, it again, kind of getting back to the modeling and how this whole conversation kicked off. But, when you go back to your previous slide that shows the system architecture, the reason that they're able to offer, again, some of that advanced functionality is because of the architecture, that they have lying underneath. So kind of given that as the context, my real question then becomes, with some of the other solutions that you've seen struggle with this layered complexity, specifically around the serialization, what is different about their architecture that makes them less able to achieve a similar result as maybe a smaller solution? Is it because they're concentrating that kind of horsepower and firepower in a much smaller, in a more focused functionality and less broad, or?
So let me, again, I think I will try to explain more in terms of how the database updates as well as the fetch works, and maybe that will help a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are two ways to, let's say, update any information. And depending upon how you are updating, you will see that the time would differ. For example, let's say one way could be that, you know what, you have the address. In the address field, you have the address line number one, address line number two, city, state, country, zip code. These six things go together, right? Now, Andy, when you look at the modeling, you want to make sure these six things are always together. Because if you are going to see address line one somewhere, and if you don't have city, it's not going to make a lot of sense, right? So that's why these two things need to be together. Now, Dave, one way to design this would be that I am storing all of these in text field in database in six different fields in a table. Or I could normalize a little bit. And then what I could do is I can store my city first somewhere and then get a code from that. And that code I am going to store in my address field. Now I can create as many hierarchies. The more reuse you are going to do in database, the easier it is going to be to maintain. But when you are going to be looking at fetch, the fetch is going to be more expensive. So there is always a fine balance. It's almost like project management. Okay, these are like three legs of a stool. So when you compromise on scope quality and what is that? The quality budget as well as the scope, I guess. Once you change one variable, the other is going to be more expensive. So there is always sort of the trade-off, in the database world in terms of what you want to do. Typically, bigger ERP system, you need to have a lot more layers. So that's why it becomes very expensive to be able to update these things when you are going to be, let's say, you are running a MRP run for 500 bombs, and those 500 bombs have 500 different layers. When you are going to have all of these layers, and they are going to have sub dependencies of, they are updating probably GL code, probably costing. So depending upon what all you are updating and how long each call is going to take. In these guys' case, obviously they are, number one, flattening the architecture. So the number of calls are not going to be as many. So easier.
Yeah, no,
it
makes total sense. Makes total sense. So, and I think I think it's good for people to start to learn and understand those big differentiators in because again, all of that, back to your point, it goes back towards not just the development, but the cost of implementation. It goes to all of those pieces where, again, sometimes, from a surface level, especially if you've not done been a part of any type of implementation before, you may look at things from a surface level perspective and say, we're comparing apples and apples, and we're obviously not. We're comparing two very different things. So.
Exactly, and that's what makes ERP hard. It's all about data modeling, to be honest. It's all about data modeling. So here we were here. So I think I don't have anything else here, but this is very similar to what we had seen in case of Blue Link ERP. If you guys remember, they had very similar processes as well. So now we will talk about some of this flat modeling here, okay, in terms of the screen. So obviously the screen is very pretty. I don't know how much you can see it, but overall, if you look at the number of tabs, okay, you are going to see only 4 tabs. Now, each of those tabs could be a one table, or it could be 15 tables, depending upon the architecture that you might have underneath. Sometimes the systems are trying to sort of isolate that complexity, the technical complexity, because they don't want to expose everything. Otherwise, people will get confused, right? So sometimes they are doing some flattening here. But overall, when you look at a system like this, and when you are seeing only 4 tabs, okay, you can you sort of know that they don't have as many one-to-one relationship or the data modeling in the system. So the system is designed for slightly smaller businesses. That's the way to think about it. Now, it didn't have anything whatsoever. Okay, that's a crazy system in general. Okay, if they have flattened everything, that's going to be really, really flat system. That's going to be much harder to scale in general because they don't have that reusability built as part of the data model. So here they are talking about edit bill of material. It's probably going to be a formula that they are trying to model here. Then they have a little bit of the ingredients that you need to have as part of your pharma processes. So anytime you are going to change any sort of ingredient, that needs to be translated as part of your calories or the nutritional info that you are going to have that you need to print on the label. So that all is stored as part of your ERP system, and that correlation has to be there. It has to be built as part of your product model. If it is not there, then the system will not be able to print that. The workflow and routing are different. So again, my guess is going to be that, you know what, they will struggle with the correlation because they are treated, and most smaller systems typically like to segment these because your MRP is going to be one and the production is going to be another. Most smaller companies, they don't really care for that correlation. But when you get bigger, when you have to isolate, when you have to do very tight scheduling, that's where you need to make sure that the materials are going to be there, on the right operation. That's where you sort of need that. But these guys may struggle with that, I guess. Do you guys have any comment? No? Okay, so here is the item master. And in this particular case, there are some very interesting things. For example, the sequence number matters a lot. And that's not the same sequence number that you are going to see. And Andy, you need to remind me this. I think the sequence number that we see in the discrete patches is the job sequence, right? That sequence is going to be more from the scheduling perspective, but this sequence is different. This sequence is literally
can be the operation within a job as well.
Exactly. In discrete patches, that is the sequence. That's not sort of the index number, I would say, for the operation. It's very different the way it operates. It's almost like a tag that you are correlating two different data points. Here, it's a real sequence. It's almost like index, the way it works. So it's a very different, the way this is. And then you have things like lab only items, which is a very unique piece of functionality that you are going to see only in pharma and these verticals. Okay, you don't have any other comments, I can move to the next one. So here we are talking about the stability test, and this is going to be the edit quality control group is where is going to be the location where you are going to find. So I think the best way to think about is going to be to think about the hierarchy where this one is coming from. So this is at the item level, and item has the QC test, QC has the edit quality control group, and then you are going to have the test case which are going to have the measurements and the sequence. So that's the layered modeling and the hierarchy that you are looking at these test cases, and each of these steps could require electronic signature. So the process is very deep and embedded the way this works, especially in the pharma space. Any comments, guys? Or I can move to the next one. In some cases, we have seen where the formula is going to change in between the process, and those process verticals are going to be extremely challenging. Some companies don't even commit there because once you perform the test cases, it seems that if the BOM is going to change, then some companies, some solutions cannot really handle that, so they'd like to stay away from that. So make sure if you have that process, then you are betting on that, whether the system can handle any sort of BOM changes in between when the quality is going to be performed. I don't know why they have that limitation, maybe because of their data model or whatever, but a lot of systems have that limitation as well. Batch size at the routing level. Again, this is very interesting. So even the batch size is very, very, very deep embedded as part of your data model, and that has to be part of your item master. The way that is defined. This is how your printing functionality work. This is going to be at the item level. This information is coming from your item model. So this needs to be mapped correctly at the BOM level to be able to print this. And anytime you are going to change the formula, and these formulas are going to be very similar to your Excel formula, where the variables could be any of the materials that could be part of your BOM, or it could be some of the external factors. Okay, so the formula in general is very complex the way formulation works. So the BOM model is not going to be as simple as discrete. It is far more complex in general the way the formula works, and that drives the nutritional labels. So obviously it's far more serious because this is going to be slightly more external. We have 4 minutes, guys. Do you guys have comment? I have one comment from the audience. We need to cover that, and I need to take your commentary. Do you want to go on to a couple of more slides or comments? Comments?
Couple more slides, I'd be happy.
Okay, Dave, you have a lot of comments or no? Okay, so here I think one of the things that I really wanted to hit it on this one is when they say multi-entity functionality, a lot of systems are going to claim that, but the multi-entity functionality that is there in this system, this is a shortcut. Okay, so typically when you look at the multi-entity functionality, and again, I am going back to my data modeling. So when you are going to look at the financial system, the real financial system, systems like, SAP, Sage Intacct, they are really designed for accountants. So the way they are going to model the data is going to be very different. For them, each entity is going to have your base currency. It's going to have its chart of accounts. It's going to have, what else am I missing here? The company address, etc., the tax ID. That is all going to be part of your entity. And then each entity needs to be modeled with the respective chart of accounts. And you are going to have locations. You are going to have the user access across those entities. So here, what they have done is it's really the location functionality that they are calling it as multi-entity. Sure, they have faked their way of creating that multi-entity functionality by creating some of the GL restrictions, but the model is not going to be scalable. Okay, the way the data model is designed, it's not going to scale. So this is not designed for the multi-entity functionality. And that's where, again, the truth lies in your data model. Data model dictates whether your processes are going to scale or not. So pay attention to your data model. This is not the multi-entity functionality, even though they are claiming that.
Well, multi-entity is usually multiple financial entities or companies. Is that what they're implying there, or are they talking about multiple locations?
So they have faked their way. So you might be able to handle the multi-entities in the system. Let's say if you have one or two or three, but let's say if you're a real CFO and you are used to of seeing, okay, these are my books, these are my user-defined books, these are my chart of accounts, these are, you'll struggle there.
Right, I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and there are a lot of different shortcuts, and they have like literally flattened the whole multi-entity architecture, okay, to make it easier for people to understand. Because obviously these guys are not going to have accounting background. Even accountants struggle with multi-entity functionality, so they have to make it easier. So sometimes when people say easy, that means not scalable.
Yeah.
Okay. Chart of accounts, when you look at the structure of chart of accounts, this could be another hint that you might be able to get, honestly speaking. So these chart of accounts are very legacy, the way they are done. Okay, even though the system is pretty, but these chart of accounts are not going to scale for your financial processes. The newer systems, especially if you're going to look at the newer ERP systems, they are going to have a chart of accounts and 8 different dimensions that are not going to be part of the same string. Okay, here, these chart of accounts don't scale. And that's why the newer systems handle it very different, the way they are handling. And that's why the multi-entity functionality is going to be far easier with them than the legacy systems. And that's why the legacy systems did not scale, because they could not handle this kind of processing back in the days. That's why they had to flatten the structure. So this is very legacy chart of account structure. That could be another hint that you might be able to get whether the system is legacy or not. So I think that's good enough for now. I can take some comments and we can cover one comment.
I know I didn't notice any kind of a lab or laboratory type module. Did you notice anything there for that?
They definitely have that, Andy. Yeah. So they have. So one functionality that they have is the lab only item. That's a very unique functionality that you are going to require, because some items you are only going to send to the labs, and there is going to be a little inventory, handshake there when you send to the labs, right? And sometimes that could be just consumed. So there are a lot of different variables that go in when you are going to be treating. And the QC is very strong as well. But again, Andy, if you're looking for the whole LIMS functionality, they are not going to have all of that.
Right.
No chemistry happening inside the ERP system. Dave, comment. Do you want to cover this one?
Yeah, happy to. Andrews chimed in that C# officially pronunciation comes from the musical sharp, which is higher in note because higher would supersede the C++. But I'm surprised Andy didn't go with the I don't know, is that Octothorpe? Octothorpe?
He's exactly my age now too. Yeah, that's okay. I love you, Andrews. I love you.
Yeah.
Too much fun.
All right, guys. Any more last-minute comments before I close?
No?
That's it for today. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another solution or the vendor. On that note, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, everybody.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Dave Chrysler, head over to thechrysler.club. It's THECHRYSLER.CLUB. If you want to learn more about Andy Pratico, head over to ESSoft.com. It's ESSOFT.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.